I stood in the cramped bedroom, the dim light from the bedside lamp casting a faint glow on Megan's face. My wife. I am Andre Brooks, 35 years old, an electrician in California. I took a deep breath, trying to keep my voice calm, almost whispering. Megan, I have to leave urgently for a work trip for a few days. While I'm away, can you help me take care of Mom a little? Just cook a few simple meals and do some light cleaning. It's not much. I looked into her eyes, hoping to see a nod, a smile, or at least some understanding. My mother, Violetta Brooks, 62 years old, had been bedridden for days. She had a high fever and was so weak she couldn't even sit up on her own. I had been by her side the whole time, cooking porridge, giving her medicine, wiping her body, all by myself. Now, with an emergency call from my manager about a major incident at the power station, I had no choice. I believed Megan would understand. We were husband and wife. This was about family. She would do it, wouldn't she? But Megan just sat there on the bed, scrolling through her phone. Then she looked up at me with cold, emotionless eyes. She spoke in a flat tone, as if declining an invitation for coffee. No, that's not my responsibility. I'm not obligated to take care of your mother. I froze. It felt like a bucket of ice water had been dumped over me, seeping straight into my heart. What did you just say? I stammered, trying to convince myself I'd misheard. But Megan continued, her voice still calm. I'm not cooking or cleaning anything either. That's her duty, not mine. It has nothing to do with me. My heart pounded furiously, blood rushed to my head. For days while Mom was sick, I had handled everything alone. Waking up early to cook porridge, rushing home at lunch to change her diapers, staying up all night to give her medicine. And Megan? She hadn't once asked how Mom was doing, hadn't even stepped into her room to check on her. I couldn't hold it in anymore. The resentment exploded and my voice came out louder than I intended. What are you saying, Megan? I've been taking care of Mom all by myself these past few days, and you haven't helped even once. You're my wife. This is our family. Megan turned her head away defiantly, her eyes icy cold, her tone cruel and challenging. That's your problem. I don't have time to take care of a sick old woman who can't even get out of bed. Each word cut into me like a cold blade straight through the heart. I took a sharp breath, trying to keep my voice from breaking, but it trembled with rage and despair. I just got a call from my manager. There's a major incident at the power station. I have to go right now, and I might not be back for days. I have no other choice, Megan. Please. Just for a few days, I'm begging you. Megan let out a sarcastic laugh and threw her phone onto the bed in irritation. You're always like this. The moment something comes up, you use your mother as an excuse. Your job, your mother. Deal with it yourself. Don't expect anything from me. I took a step forward, my heart pounding violently, my voice almost choking. I'm not asking you to do anything beyond your strength. I just need you to be a wife, to have even a little humanity, Megan. She crossed her arms over her chest and stared at me with those frigid eyes. You're mistaken. I married you. It doesn't mean I have to sacrifice myself for your family. In that moment, everything shattered. The rage surged uncontrollably, my fists clenched so hard they shook. In a blind fit of fury, I raised my hand. The sharp, resounding slap echoed through the stifling room. Megan clutched her cheek, her eyes wide with shock. I stood frozen for a brief second, stunned by my own action, breathing heavily, my heart pounding as if it would burst from my chest. Then I lunged forward, my voice hoarse with anger. That's enough. From now on, my mother will not stay in this house for one more minute. Megan lost it. She jumped up as if set on fire, screaming venomous curses. You bastard! You dare hit me? And that old hag, she does nothing but lie there being a burden to everyone. I hate both of you. Her insults flew like knives, slicing into me and into the mother lying in the next room. I heard every word clearly, but I didn't respond anymore. I turned abruptly and stormed out of the room, shaking violently. My heart pounded, my mind spun, and only one thought remained. I had to get my mother out of this place right now. I went straight to Mom's room. She lay there, frail beneath the thin blanket, breathing weakly. I gently sat beside her bed and took her hand. Mom, we're leaving. I'm taking you away from here tonight. Violeta opened her eyes, weary and full of worry. She squeezed my hand tightly, her voice faint. Andre, don't make this a big deal. I'm afraid you'll lose your job, lose your family because of me. Just let me stay here. Go to work. I shook my head, tears welling up. No, Mom. I can't leave you here another minute. Megan, she doesn't deserve us. Let's go. The air in the house turned to ice. The wind howled outside the window as if foretelling an irreversible turning point that had just begun. I helped my mother up, filled with determination yet also gripped by fear of what lay ahead. We stepped out of the room, down the pitch-black hallway where the shadows seemed to whisper warnings. Megan was still in the bedroom. Her curses echoed through the wall, but I ignored them. We reached the front door and the night wind rushed in as if urging us to leave faster. I carefully helped Mom into the car, easing her into the reclined passenger seat and adjusting her position so she could breathe more easily. She coughed weakly a few times, each one twisting my heart. I tucked an extra blanket tightly around her, pulling it up to her chin, then gently closed the door. The engine roared to life, shattering the heavy silence. We drove away from the house without a word, heading toward an unknown destination. In the rearview mirror, I watched the house disappear into the darkness. A strange feeling rose inside me, freedom mixed with overwhelming fear. Where would we go now? Money was tight and Mom was seriously ill. Anxiety made my hands grip the steering wheel so hard my knuckles turned white. My eyes stared fixedly at the dark road ahead. The car rolled through the deserted streets of late-night California. Yellow streetlights reflected off the rain-slicked pavement. I glanced at Mom. She was trying to sleep, but her breathing remained labored. Suddenly, I remembered work. I had to call my manager and ask for emergency leave. I couldn't let them think I'd just walked out. I pulled over, took out my phone with trembling hands and dialed. Boss, it's Andre. My mom is in critical condition. I need a few days off to take care of her. I'll come back as soon as I can. My manager's voice came through as gruff as ever, but colder than I'd ever heard it. He cut me off before I could explain. Andre, I'm extremely disappointed in you. This is a major contract. We're in crisis and you're asking for leave now. You're seriously damaging the whole company. I opened my mouth to speak, but he continued, his tone final and merciless. You're fired, effective immediately. Don't call me again. I tried to protest, to remind him of all the emergency shifts I'd always taken, that I'd never once asked for leave before. But the line went dead with a cold beep. The call ended in an instant, like a final knife to the heart. I sat frozen, stunned, gripping the wheel so tightly my knuckles went white. My face stiffened with shock and helplessness. Tears rolled down uncontrollably. I'd lost my job. Our only source of income, my monthly salary, gone in the blink of an eye. What now? Rent, medicine, food, everything crashed over me like a flood. Violeta turned her head weakly and looked at me, her eyes filled with worry and pity despite her own frailty. She asked softly, voice trembling, Son, what happened? Why is your face so pale? I pressed my lips together, forcing down the surge of emotion, and managed a strained smile. It's nothing, Mom. Just a little work issue. I'll fix it. But my smile was crooked and she knew. She said nothing more, yet her gaze followed me silently, full of sorrow. She understood, as she always understood her son, that I had just lost the job that was our only lifeline. The air in the car grew even heavier, broken only by the engine's hum and the wind howling against the windows. The car kept moving through dark roads toward the old boarding house district on the edge of the city where I had lived as a student. Streetlights were sparse. Darkness seemed ready to swallow us whole. I stopped in front of a row of rundown boarding houses, their walls stained and patchy, rusted tin roofs rattling in the wind. I jumped out and hurried to the front desk where the elderly landlord was dozing. I need a room for tonight, please, I said urgently. He gave me a strange look but handed over a key after I paid in cash, the last of the money in my wallet. After finishing the paperwork, I returned to the car and carried Violeta out. She felt frighteningly light in my arms. I brought her into the cramped, musty room and laid her on the hard, single bed. I adjusted the pillow, pulled the blanket higher, then sat beside her. She gave me a faint, grateful smile before quickly falling into a deep, exhausted sleep after days of illness and the sudden midnight journey. I sat there holding her hand tightly, waves of emptiness, helplessness, and fear crashing over me. The room was pitch black except for the faint streetlight filtering through the thin curtains. How would we survive? No job, no money, and Mom so sick. My heart pounded wildly, my mind spun. In that moment, old memories flooded back uncontrollably like an old film reel running backward, dragging me into the past, where it had been just the two of us relying on each other. I remember it clearly. When I was 6, my father left us for his mistress. It was a pouring, rainy morning. He walked out with his suitcase without looking back. "I'm sick of this house," he told Mom coldly. He left us in an empty home buried under gambling debts. I was too young to fully understand. I only knew to cry when I saw Mom collapse on the floor, tears streaming down her face. She held me tight and whispered, "It's okay, son. We'll be all right." From that day on, Mom carried everything alone. By day, she worked in a garment factory, her hands calloused from needles and thread. At night, she took in neighbors' laundry no matter the weather or how sick she felt. Some nights she ran a high fever, yet still sat up sewing until late, just to buy me milk. She was both a gentle mother who stroked my hair each evening and told fairy tales to help me sleep, and a strong father figure who taught me how to fix things and how to get back up after falling. "You have to be strong, Andre," she would say, her voice warm yet firm. "Never let anyone break you." She taught me everything: how to be polite to neighbors, how to hold your head high in hardship, how to rise by your own efforts. "Money can be lost, but character lasts forever," she always reminded me. I grew up fast in that frugality. By age 10, I was already helping with chores, going to the market, doing odd jobs for pocket money. Our meals were simple: bread with vegetables, thin porridge, but always filled with laughter. Just the two of us, leaning on each other through the years. Poor but peaceful, hard but warm. On rainy nights, we sat by the window. She held me and spoke of her dream, a better life for me. But everything started falling apart when I fell in love with Megan. We married quickly. I brought her home thinking I was bringing happiness. Instead, the once peaceful house gradually became suffocating, cold, and fractured beyond repair. Megan never got along with Mom. Small conflicts built into storms. Now, sitting in this boarding room holding Mom's hand, I realized that warm past was under threat. Fear of the future kept me wide awake. I just sat there listening to her breathing, praying for a miracle. I remember the first days with Megan as vividly as if a slow-motion film were playing in my mind in the dead of this silent night. It was a golden sunshine afternoon in California. After finishing my shift, I stopped by a small roadside cafe to buy coffee to bring home for Mom. While waiting in line, I saw the girl in front of me drop her phone. I bent down, picked it up, and handed it back. Megan turned around to thank me. Long, glossy hair, a radiant smile, stunningly beautiful and captivating. I was momentarily stunned. She was confident, glamorous in designer clothes, carrying a luxury handbag, and spoke with the effortless charm of a movie star. I was instantly smitten, so blinded that I overlooked everything about her true character. At that moment, all I saw was a perfect woman who could fill the emptiness of my monotonous life. Work, go home to Mom, repeat. "I'm Megan. And you?" she asked in that honey-sweet voice, and from that instant, we began. The dating period felt like a dream. Megan was always affectionate, attentive to the smallest details. She cooked simple but delicious meals, sent loving texts all day long, and took me on romantic beach dates that convinced me I had found the ideal woman to build a family with. "You're everything to me," she whispered in tight embraces, and I believed her completely. I told her about Mom, about our hard years, and she listened, nodded, even wiped away tears. "I promise I'll love her like my own mother," she vowed, and my heart melted. How could I know it was all an act? The excitement I felt back then was pure joy, not a warning of the storm to come. I married Megan with absolute faith that we would care for Violetta together, repaying her for all the years she had sacrificed for me. On our wedding day, under brilliant sunshine, I looked at Mom sitting in the front row, her eyes shining with happiness. We would be happy. Mom could finally rest and our family would be complete. But reality was far crueler. Things began to go wrong the moment I suggested we live with Mom after the wedding. We were sitting on the sofa planning our new life when I said, "Honey, let's move in with Mom, okay? She's been alone for so long, I want to take care of her." Megan didn't object outright, but her eyes visibly cooled. Her smile vanished and reluctance showed in the way she clenched her hands. "If that's what you want, I have no objection," she replied flatly, pretending to agree. I thought she was just tired. I didn't realize that was the first crack. From the day we moved in with Mom, Megan never lifted a finger around the house. Every single day she came home from her office job at a small company, sprawled on the sofa watching TV with her feet on the table, or scrolled endlessly on her phone, leaving all the cleaning and cooking to Violetta. I would come home exhausted from my shift and find Mom hunched over in the kitchen, sweeping the floor, the smell of simmering chicken soup wafting from the pot. "Mom, rest." "Let me do it," I'd say. But she'd shake her head. "You rest, son. I'm used to it." Megan just sat there as if the house were a hotel and Mom the maid. My heart began to ache, but I told myself she's still adjusting, she'll change. Out of love for me, afraid I was working too hard and terrified of causing friction between husband and wife, Violetta silently did everything: cleaning, grocery shopping, cooking, laundry. She woke at dawn, prepared breakfast, swept, washed clothes, and still hadn't rested by nightfall. Some days she was exhausted, coughing from dust, yet she smiled. "I'm still strong, don't worry too much." It broke my heart to watch, but I didn't dare say much for fear of angering Megan. Everything repeated day after day in Mom's quiet endurance and my own painful silence. I blamed myself. Why am I not stronger? Why am I letting her suffer? A growing unease crept in like the ticking of a time bomb. One day I came home earlier than usual because my shift ended unexpectedly. I walked in and froze. Violetta was bent over, wiping the floor, back hunched, breathing heavily, sweat pouring down her face, while Megan sat watching TV without a glance, the loud laughter from the show grating in my ears. Anger flared in my chest like fire. "Megan, can you pause the TV and help Mom clean the floor?" "She's exhausted," I said directly, trying to stay calm. Megan just glanced over and shrugged. "I'm in the middle of a show. She can do it herself." So annoying. Then she got up, walked into the bedroom, and slammed the door, leaving Violetta standing alone in the empty living room, rag still in hand. Mom looked at me with a sad smile. "It's okay, son. Don't be angry with her. I'm almost done." I swallowed hard, choking on resentment, but didn't follow Megan. I wanted to scream, but held it in, terrified everything would shatter. Another time, Violetta spent the entire evening cooking, her hands trembling as she chopped vegetables and simmered meat for a family meal. When the fragrant food was served, I sat down with a weary smile. Megan tasted a few bites, put down her spoon, and bluntly complained, "This is so bland. How do you even cook, Mom? It's not to my taste at all." Violetta froze beside the table, face paling, hands clutching her apron. My heart felt crushed. I couldn't hold back and raised my voice in Mom's defense. "Megan, what are you saying? Mom worked hard to cook and you just criticize like that?" But Megan huffed, shook her head, and walked away. "I'm just being honest. You always take your mom's side. I'm going to bed." She made her defiance clear and slammed the bedroom door. I stayed at the table holding Mom. "Don't be sad, Mom. She's just a bit stubborn." Mom only shook her head. "It's fine, son. I'm used to it." I tried talking to Megan countless times, gently beside the pillow. "Honey, please help Mom a little. She's getting old." Sternly, "You can't keep acting like this. This is family responsibility." trying to keep peace by buying her gifts in exchange for change, sometimes forced to speak harshly during arguments. "You're too selfish, Megan. I can't take this anymore." Each time she just mumbled agreement, nodded. "Yes, I'll try," but never changed. She kept lying on the sofa, kept criticizing, kept ignoring everything. My anger built up, waiting for the inevitable explosion. Whenever tensions rose between us, Violeta was always the one to mediate, urging me to be patient. "Son, bear with it for the sake of peace in the family. I can handle it. I just want us to stay together." She kept telling me not to let her presence ruin my marriage, even though she was the one suffering the most, enduring the complaints and contemptuous looks. Her words only made me feel more tormented, torn between unbearable love for my mother and guilt at my own helplessness in my own home. Why didn't I protect her sooner? I asked myself every night, lying beside Megan, yet filled with regret. The once warm house had become a prison, and I felt utterly lost. Reality pulled me back. I looked at Mom's frail hand in mine, deep wrinkles and calluses from decades of hard work. Today had finally crossed every limit of endurance. All the times I had swallowed my anger had now forged an irreversible decision. Even if I lost my job, even if we had nothing left, even if we had to start over from zero, I could not let Mom be hurt for one more day. Deep in my heart, one choice was now carved in stone. From this moment forward, my only priority would be protecting my mother, no matter the cost. The boarding room was pitch black, wind howling outside the window, but that resolve burned like a warm flame inside me. The future was uncertain and terrifying, yet I was ready to face it. In the days that followed, I began running everywhere, looking for any job that could bring in money to support the two of us. At dawn, before the sun even rose, I would get up, throw on my old jacket, and head out into the bustling streets of California. I wandered from construction site to construction site, asking foremen for helper work, stopped at cafes begging to be a waiter, even applied at supermarkets for warehouse jobs. "I'll take anything, as long as it pays weekly," I told the owner of a small auto repair garage, my voice full of hope. He shook his head. "Sorry, we're fully staffed." One place after another, my legs grew numb with exhaustion, but I didn't stop. Each rejection twisted my heart, thinking of Mom lying in that cramped boarding room, waiting for me to come home with a meager bag of groceries. Anxiety surged. Would I find work today, or would we go hungry? I gritted my teeth and kept going. During the day, I rushed from one odd job to another. Luckily, I managed to land temporary electrical repair work with a small company. The pay was low, but enough to buy milk and medicine for Mom. Sweat poured down my face under the scorching sun, my hands black with grease, but I never complained. In the evenings, I returned to Violeta in our tiny boarding room. I cooked, cared for her, and fed her medicine myself. I learned to make thin rice porridge, adding a few vegetables for nutrition, then sat by the bed spoon-feeding her. "Eat up, Mom." I'm getting pretty good at this, I'd say, forcing cheerfulness so she would smile. She swallowed with difficulty, but her eyes lit up. "You're working too hard for me." "Thank you, son." Those moments warmed my heart and made the exhaustion disappear. Mom's health slowly improved bit by bit. The fever gradually broke. She could now sit up against the wall to eat, talk with me. From being completely bedridden, she began to laugh and tell old stories again, even if her voice was still weak. "I feel much better today, don't worry," she'd say, gently stroking my hair. Watching her recover day by day filled me with both joy and heartache. It drove home how right my decision had been to take her away. If we had stayed with Megan, what would have happened to her? The thought of what might have been if I hadn't acted made me shudder. She was alive, she was smiling, that was everything. Throughout this entire time, Megan never once called. Never sent a single text, never asked how Mom was, never apologized, never showed the slightest concern. My phone stayed silent as if she had never existed. Her silence made it clear she still believed she was the victim and that Mom and I were the ones in the wrong. Does she really think she's the victim? I asked myself every night, bitterness flooding my chest. Not one word about Mom's illness, not one apology for the venomous things she'd said. That silence cut like a knife, but it also woke me up. This marriage had died long ago. One day, after a grueling shift, I decided to go back to the old house to pick up more clothes and personal documents. My heart pounded as I drove there, anxious about what I might find. I opened the door and froze, as if struck by lightning. The living room was littered with leftover food, soggy pizza boxes, potato chip bags, beer cans rolling across the floor. The stench of stale alcohol and cold food hit me like a wave, making my stomach turn. The house that had once been clean and warm was now a garbage dump, unrecognizable from the days when Mom still lived there. I walked into the bedroom and the sight made my heart clench. Megan lay there drunk, hair a tangled mess, clothes disheveled, the bedside lamp casting shadows on her exhausted, dissolute face. Empty liquor bottles lay beside the bed. She snored loudly. I stood frozen, rage rising. This was Mom's home, now turned into a party den. Despite the anger and disappointment boiling inside me, I quietly gathered my things. A few shirts, important papers from the drawer without waking her, and slipped out. As I stepped outside, I looked back at the house one last time, my heart aching. How could she do this? I thought, gripping the keys so hard my hand hurt. The unease about what was happening inside kept me awake all night. The next few times I returned for the rest of my belongings, the scene was almost unchanged. The house filthy, floors sticky with dirt and bottle caps, Megan either exhausted or drunk. Once she was sprawled on the sofa, eyes glazed, surrounded by loud, unfamiliar friends laughing and drinking. I walked in trying to stay calm, but rage boiled inside. One time I couldn't hold it in and spoke up. "Megan, what are you doing to the house? This is Mom's home." She snapped back shrilly. "Whose house doesn't matter. You and that old woman walked out on your own, remember? Now I live however I want. Mind your own business." Her words slapped me in the face, but I stayed silent. Arguing was pointless. I collected my things, left, chest tight with resentment, waiting for the moment everything would finally explode. The breaking point came one afternoon. I was on my way back to the boarding house after work, shirt still soaked with sweat, when I ran into Mrs. Carter, the kind neighbor who lived next door to the old house. She was watering plants in front of her home. She waved me over, but her face looked hesitant. "Andre, I need to tell you something," she whispered, pulling me aside as if afraid someone might hear. My heart raced. I had no idea what was coming. She hesitated, then said quietly, "Lately, I've seen Megan bringing strange men home. They're very affectionate, hugging and kissing right at the door. One guy even stayed overnight and only left in the morning. I didn't want to say anything, but you should know." I stood frozen in the middle of the street, my mind spinning. Every word from Mrs. Carter stabbed straight into my chest. Rage, humiliation, and pain choked me. My heart pounded so hard my hands shook. Are you sure? I didn't mishear, did I?" I stammered, my voice breaking. Mrs. Carter nodded, eyes full of pity. I saw it clearly. "I'm not mistaken. Be careful, dear." I turned away, legs heavy as lead, thoughts chaotic. Images of Megan with some stranger flooded my mind. I wanted to scream. In that moment, I realized this marriage had gone beyond indifference. It had plunged straight into betrayal. A fire of uncontrollable fury ignited inside me, signaling that an unavoidable confrontation was now only moments away. I drove back to the boarding house with my mind in chaos. The scenery on both sides of the road blurred under the fading afternoon sun. Every time I stopped at a red light, I gripped the steering wheel tightly, trying to suppress the rage boiling inside me. Mrs. Carter's words echoed in my head, word for word, detail by detail, hammering into my brain like blows from a sledgehammer. Just imagining Megan possibly betraying me made my heart feel like it was about to explode from anger and humiliation. When I reached the boarding room and opened the door, I saw Mom sitting propped against pillows reading an old book. She looked up and smiled. "You're back, son? How was work today?" but her smile vanished the moment she saw my face, pale, eyes red with fury. I sat down beside the bed and tried to speak calmly to Violetta, though no matter how hard I tried, the anger and resentment spilled out in every trembling word. "Mom, I have to tell you something," I began, my hands clenched. "Megan, she's been cheating on me. Mrs. Carter told me everything. She's been bringing strange men home, acting all lovey-dovey right at the door, even letting them spend the night. I can't believe it, but it all fits with what I've seen. The mess, the smell of alcohol, the strange traces." The words poured out like a flood, thick with outrage. Mom stared at me, eyes wide with shock, her trembling hand reaching for mine. "Calm down, son. Are you absolutely sure? Don't jump to conclusions." I shook my head, voice rising. "I'm certain, Mom. I'm taking you back to our old house right now. I'm reclaiming the home that has always belonged to you. We can't let someone as irresponsible as Megan defile the place that used to be our sanctuary. She turned it into a party den. And now she's cheating? That's unacceptable." I declared that I could no longer tolerate it, could no longer pretend nothing was happening. My heart pounded as I thought about the confrontation ahead. How would Megan deny it? Would it turn violent? Mom anxiously tried to calm me, her voice shaking, eyes filled with worry. "Please calm down first. Don't rush into anything. Try talking to your wife again, find out the truth before deciding." "What if it's just a misunderstanding?" She squeezed my hand tighter, pleading, "I'm afraid your anger will push things too far, that you'll lose both your family and your future." Her words twisted my heart, but I rejected all advice. I insisted I had endured enough and would not back down this time. I've put up with too much already, from the coldness and contempt to today's betrayal. I can't keep pretending everything's fine. Just rest, Mom. I'll handle the rest. I stood up, filled with determination mixed with dread, and drove alone back to the old house to confront Megan face to face. As I sped through familiar streets, my heart raced, cold sweat breaking out. What will she say? Will she cry or scream? I wondered, gripping the wheel. The wind roared through the open window like a warning of the coming storm. I opened the door and stepped inside. The stench of alcohol still hung heavy in the air. Megan was sprawled on the sofa, hair disheveled, face weary, scrolling mindlessly on her phone. She looked up, eyes indifferent. "What are you doing here? Looking for a fight?" I stood in front of her, voice ice cold. "Megan, we need to talk. About you sleeping with another man." The moment those words left my mouth, Megan shot to her feet, face flushed with rage. "Cheating? Where did you hear that? Who told you? That nosy old hag Carter, right?" She let out a venomous laugh. "That bored old woman only knows how to make up stories and destroy other people's families. I haven't done anything wrong." I didn't waste time arguing. I calmly listed everything. The all-night parties, the trashed house every time I came by, the smell of booze, even a man's shirt I'd found forgotten in the bedroom. "Explain, Megan." "Mrs. Carter saw you bringing him home, making out at the door, letting him stay overnight. Do you think I'm blind?" Faced with concrete evidence, Megan fell silent for a moment. A flash of panic crossed her face, her eyes darted away. She stammered, unable to form a coherent defense. I declared my decision without hesitation. "We're getting divorced, Megan. I have no reason left to continue this marriage." She froze, then exploded in fury. "Divorce? You're just looking for an excuse to abandon your responsibilities. I'm not leaving this house. You'll never kick me out." Coldly, I informed her that the house belonged to my mother, not her. The deed was clear. Mom had owned it long before we married. "You have no right to be here. If you don't pack your things and leave on your own, I'll call the police for illegal trespassing." My words hit her like a thunderbolt. Rage, humiliation, and shame turned her face ashen. She hurled a few more insults, but cornered with no way out, she finally dragged her suitcase to the door, eyes burning with hatred. "You'll regret treating me like this," she screamed before storming out. After Megan left, I returned to the boarding house and brought Mom back home after many days apart. She stepped inside with a mixture of joy and worry, her eyes sweeping over the living room, still bearing traces of the recent chaos. Beer cans on the floor, the faint lingering smell of alcohol. Yet Violeta still urged me to reconsider, hoping I wouldn't let anger sever everything completely. Think it over again, son. Megan is still your wife. What if she truly regrets it? I stood firm, repeating that I would never again let Mom live in contempt and pain. No, Mom, I've thought it through. From now on, it's just the two of us starting over. No turning back. In the days that followed, we cleaned the house together and slowly returned to a quiet daily rhythm. I scrubbed the floors, Mom rearranged things, and laughter gradually came back. On the surface, everything seemed peaceful again. But deep inside me, a lingering unease smoldered, warning that the storm was far from over. Every night as I lay in bed, thoughts of Megan haunted me. What would she do next? Come crawling back with apologies or keep the hatred burning? Anxiety kept sleep shallow, like standing at the edge of a new tempest. I tried to focus on my daily work. Small electrical repair contracts I managed to pick up through friends. Every morning I woke early, made coffee for Mom, sat with her for a simple breakfast, toast with jam, and listened to her tell stories from when I was little. But Megan never left my mind. Where had she gone? Was she living with that man now? I checked my phone several times, half hoping, half dreading a message from her. Nothing. That silence felt like a ticking time bomb. Every car that stopped outside made my stomach clench. The uneasy feeling grew day by day, creeping into every corner of the house like a shadow. One golden, gentle California afternoon, while I was sitting in the living room fixing an old table lamp and Mom was in the kitchen preparing dinner, there was a sudden knock at the door. I stood up, walked over, opened it, and froze. Megan stood there, face ice cold, with a tall, dark-haired man beside her who wore an arrogant smirk. That had to be Ridge Grant, her lover, exactly as Mrs. Carter had described. Without a word, Megan pushed past me into the house, dragging a large bag to collect the last of her belongings, right while Mom and I were home. She packed coldly, not sparing me a single glance, not greeting Violeta at all. Mom stood in the kitchen doorway, eyes wide with shock, hands clutching her apron. I stood rooted to the spot, blood rushing to my head. "Megan, what are you doing?" "This isn't your house anymore," I said, trying to keep my voice steady, but my heart was pounding. She didn't answer, just yanked clothes and cosmetics from the closet and stuffed them into the bag. Ridge leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed, looking at Mom and me with open contempt, as if we were beneath him. The air in the house turned suffocating. Tension spread like thick fog. Mom whispered, "Son, let her take her things. Don't fight." But rage was boiling inside me. My fists hurt from clenching so hard. Megan finished quickly, grabbed the bag, and headed for the door where Ridge waited with that smug grin, patting her shoulder like she was his trophy. At first, she seemed ready to leave, walking fast as if she couldn't get away quickly enough. But after a few steps, whether she couldn't swallow her resentment or deliberately wanted to provoke us, she suddenly stopped, turned, and planted herself right in the doorway. Her eyes blazed with hatred as she stared at Mom and me. "Wait," she spat, voice shrill and dripping with sarcasm. "Before I go, let me make something clear. Andre, do you think you're some kind of hero? Dragging that old woman away and then throwing me out? Do you think that makes you the good guy?" She sneered, her gaze sweeping over us with pure contempt. "You two have been living off me for years and now you act all high and moral. She's always sick, always lying around doing nothing. And you're just a weak husband who couldn't keep his wife." Each word stabbed straight into our dignity. Megan gripped her suitcase handle tighter, hissing through clenched teeth. "You think divorce ends this? I'll make you regret today." Mom stood stunned, face pale, tears rolling silently down her cheeks as she gripped the kitchen counter. Seeing my mother insulted like that snapped something inside me. Rage exploded, burning away all reason. "Shut your mouth, Megan," I roared, lunging toward her completely out of control, fist raised, ready to slap her again. My vision blurred, breath ragged, eyes burning with fury. At that instant, Ridge charged in, blocking me aggressively, deliberately provoking. "Touch her and see what happens," he growled, shoving my shoulder hard, eyes blazing. We crashed into each other, fists flying, kicks landing, the dull thuds of blows echoing. I grabbed his collar. He punched me in the stomach. The air outside the house became suffocating with violence. Mom screamed, "Stop it, Andre. Don't fight." But I heard nothing, only the blood roaring in my ears, a mix of terror and exhilaration. Would I hurt him badly? Would the police come? The chaos, shouting, punches, furniture crashing, drew the neighbors. Mrs. Carter came running from next door, face red from sprinting, waving her arms. "Stop it right now. What on earth are you doing? Talk it out. Don't fight." She threw herself between us, trying to pull us apart, shouting, "Andre, calm down. Don't let anger blind you. And you, let go right now." After frantic struggling, we were finally separated. Both of us stood panting, glaring, hearts pounding like war drums. I wiped blood from the corner of my mouth, still shaking with adrenaline. Meanwhile, Megan still wouldn't stop. She kept hurling venom at Violetta. "You old hag, who do you think you are? Living forever just to torment your son? Useless parasite." Watching Mom hang her head, tears streaming down her face, Mrs. Carter finally snapped. She turned to Violetta with a look of long-held anguish, as if carrying a heavy secret for years. In front of everyone, she blurted out a sentence that froze the air solid. "Violetta, how much longer are you going to stay silent and keep hiding the truth about everything?" That sentence stunned me into silence. Megan and Ridge went rigid. Violetta stood motionless, face drained of color, eyes wide with panic. Dead silence fell over the front yard, thick, oppressive, announcing that a shocking secret was about to be revealed. My heart hammered wildly, dread surged through me. What truth? What had Mom been hiding? I stared at her, eyes full of questions, but she only looked down, saying nothing. Megan opened her mouth, but no words came. Ridge stood like a statue. Mrs. Carter sighed deeply. "You have to tell them, Violetta. It's time." That moment stretched on forever. The evening breeze carried the scent of wildflowers from the neighbor's garden, yet the atmosphere felt heavy as lead. I stepped closer to Mom, touching her shoulder. "Mom, what have you been hiding from me? What is Mrs. Carter talking about?" She shook her head, avoiding my eyes, and a cold shiver ran down my spine. The unease I had felt for days now crystallized into terrifying clarity. This was not the end. It was the beginning of something much bigger. Neighbors began gathering, whispering. I knew without a doubt that our lives were about to be turned upside down once again. After Mrs. Carter's shocking words, Megan, Ridge, and I all turned at once to stare at Violetta, each of us with eyes full of confusion and anticipation. I was utterly stunned. I couldn't fathom what secret my mother could possibly have kept hidden until this very moment. My heart pounded wildly, my mind spinning with a flood of questions. What was this secret? Did it have to do with my father, money, or some dark past she had buried for decades? Mrs. Carter sighed and took a step back, as if already regretting her outburst. The tension on the front porch was so thick I could hear the leaves rustling in the breeze while neighbors whispered, "What's going on? What has Mrs. Violetta been hiding?" After a few seconds of heavy silence, Violetta slowly straightened up a little. Though her face was still pale, her trembling voice carried a quiet resolve. "Andre, and everyone here. Yes, I have kept something hidden for a very long time. The entire stretch of land along this street, every parcel, actually belongs to me." Her words struck like a bolt of lightning out of a clear sky. I froze, my mind going completely blank. The land along the whole street, meaning our house, Mrs. Carter's house, this entire little block? I stared at her, stammering, "Mom, what are you saying? How could you possibly—" She continued, her voice steadier now. "Part of it I inherited from my parents when I was young. The rest I quietly saved up for and bought piece by piece over many years. I worked myself to the bone, saved every penny, bought small plots and rented them out. I stood there, ears ringing, unable to believe that the frugal, quiet woman who had scrubbed floors and cooked meals without complaint all these years was the owner of such an enormous asset. The woman I saw bent over cleaning every day, this woman was the landlord of the entire neighborhood. I turned to Mrs. Carter, desperately seeking confirmation that I hadn't misheard. She nodded solemnly, eyes serious. "Your mother is telling the truth, Andre. I've known for years. I was the first person to rent land from her. The contract is still there. I was so dizzy I had to grab the door frame. My legs felt like jelly. I leaned against the wall to stay upright. All those years of poverty, all the times I worried about money. Had it all been an elaborate facade my mother created? She had lived simply, forced me to stand on my own 2 feet when in reality she was wealthy? My heart raced, a wave of shock and emotion surging through me. Everything was changing. Tears welled up as I looked at her. "Mom, why didn't you ever tell me? I had no idea." She gave me a sad smile. "I'll explain everything later, son." While I stood in stunned disbelief, Megan and Ridge were genuinely horrified. The arrogance and smugness drained from their faces in an instant. Megan stood frozen, mouth hanging open, her face flushing crimson, then turning ashen. Ridge, the tall, aggressive man who had just been throwing his weight around, now looked like a statue, eyes wide, arms hanging limp at his sides. Violeta turned to me, her voice softer but firm. "I kept it secret because I didn't want money to shape who you became. I never wanted you to live off family wealth. I wanted you to stand on your own, to know the value of hard work and what money really means." She paused, then added gently yet resolutely, "And you've done it, Andre. You work, you take care of me, you live honestly and responsibly. That's all I ever needed to be at peace." Her words squeezed my heart. Tears rolled down my cheeks. So every hardship I'd endured had been her lesson? Then Mom turned to Megan, her tone grave but not harsh. "As for you, my daughter-in-law, in my original plan when I passed away, all of this property was going to be left to both of you, on the condition that you lived with kindness, respect, and filial devotion. I truly believed you would be a good person, that you would care for Andre and for me. But..." She stopped, looking at Megan with deep regret. At those words, Megan dropped her gaze to the ground, face burning with shame. She realized in that moment that she had single-handedly destroyed everything. She stood trembling, unable to lift her head, her whole body rigid with humiliation. Ridge remained speechless, his earlier contempt shattered as he understood that the house and land he had just mocked belonged to the very woman he had insulted. He stepped back, face pale, fists clenched as if he wanted to punch the air itself. Unable to bear the suffocating atmosphere any longer, Megan and Ridge shrank into themselves and turned away in silence. They hurried off like they were fleeing, carrying their shame and the total collapse of their pride. I watched them go, my heart still pounding from everything that had just happened. Megan glanced back once, eyes red, but said nothing. She quickly got into the car and disappeared down the street. In the days that followed, Mom and I cleaned the house together and slowly returned to the rhythm of everyday life in a much quieter atmosphere. I scrubbed the floors, she rearranged things, and laughter gradually came back, though it was still cautious. On the surface, everything seemed settled, but deep inside me, a lingering unease still smoldered. Every night I thought about Megan. What would she do next? Would she come back to apologize or carry her hatred further? Those thoughts kept my sleep shallow, as if I were standing on the threshold of another storm. I tried to keep life normal. Each morning I woke early, made coffee for Mom, then went out to the small electrical repair jobs I'd found through old friends. Mom still tidied the house and cooked simple meals, thin porridge with vegetables, and the two of us sat at the table talking about little things. "How was work today, son?" she'd ask warmly. I'd smile and tell her about a tricky repair, but my mind kept drifting back to the secret that had just been revealed. Would that huge property bring new trouble? Every evening I pored over the documents, trying to understand the rental contracts better, yet the anxiety about Megan never faded. She now knew everything, and I had no idea whether she would stay silent or return with different schemes. One sunny California morning, I finally went to court and officially filed for divorce. After everything that had happened, the indifference, the betrayal, and now the truth about the property, I no longer hesitated. I sat in the lawyer's office, filling out the forms with slightly trembling hands, but a heart full of resolve. This is how I closed the chapter, I thought, as I handed in the paperwork and received the confirmation. Word that I had filed reached Megan quickly, perhaps through mutual friends or the court papers sent to her old address. I never expected her to show up just a few days later. It was a drizzly afternoon. I was sitting on the porch fixing an old fan while Mom prepared dinner in the kitchen when there came a soft knock. I opened the door and froze. Megan stood there looking worn and defeated, no trace of her former arrogance or defiance. She wore an old coat, hair messy, eyes red from crying, more frail and broken than I had ever seen her. Without waiting to be invited, she stepped inside, fell to her knees in front of Violeta, and burst into loud sobs, begging for forgiveness, pleading to come back, promising she would change and live dutifully, caring for her mother-in-law. "Mom, I was wrong. I was so selfish. I'm so sorry. Please give me one more chance. I'll change. I'll cook, clean, take care of you like my own mother," she cried, clutching the hem of Violeta's dress, tears streaming onto the floor. Mom looked down at her with eyes full of pity mixed with hesitation. She gently placed a hand on Megan's head but said nothing. Megan then turned to me, voice shaking. "Andre, I truly regret everything. I realize how badly I messed up. Please forgive me. We can start over. I love you and I'll prove it." I watched her silently for a long moment, her tear-streaked face, the trembling shoulders, but felt only coldness inside. Then I answered flatly, my gaze hard as stone. "No, Megan. Do you think I'd believe you now? If Mom's wealth hadn't been revealed, you would never have come crawling back. You're only here because of greed, because you want your share. You betrayed me, humiliated my mother, and now you think a few tears will fix it?" My voice didn't waver, even though my heart was racing. What if she exploded in anger or begged even more? I declared that I had absolutely no trust left in her, that this marriage was over for good. If she had anything else to say, we would see each other in court. There was nothing left to discuss. "Leave and don't ever come back," I said, pointing to the door. Megan stood up, face twisted with resentment. She wiped her tears, but her eyes burned with venom. Before walking out, she shot one last hateful glare at Mom and me, then stormed off, footsteps heavy on the path. "You'll regret treating me like this," she shouted before slamming the car door and driving away. I closed the door, turned and hugged Mom. My heart ached, yet I also felt relief. Some things hurt, but they still have to be done. "And you did the right thing," she whispered, stroking my back. A few weeks later, the divorce hearing took place at the local courthouse. The process was quick. No shared assets, no children, no significant disputes. The judge asked a few basic questions, reviewed the paperwork, and granted the divorce. Megan sat on the opposite side, face expressionless, never looking at me, signing the papers with trembling hands. When it was over, I walked out feeling both lighter and strangely empty, like I had finally closed a chapter filled with pain and betrayal. The wind blew through the courthouse courtyard, carrying the scent of damp earth after rain. I took a deep breath and thought about the future. Time passed, and life for Mom and me gradually settled back into place. We returned to our familiar rhythm. I worked, she kept the house, almost as if all the storms had finally passed. But then one ordinary day, while I was reading in the living room and Mom was making tea in the kitchen, the clear sound of a car pulling up outside rang out. I got up and stepped onto the porch, curious, then froze. Megan stood at the gate, and beside her was the familiar smug figure of Ridge. My heart pounded instantly, anger flared. What more could they possibly want after everything was finished? What are you doing here? Haven't you caused enough trouble? I growled, striding forward to block their path. Then I noticed a third person, an unfamiliar middle-aged man with a cold expression and calculating eyes, wearing an old suit and a half-smile that sent chills down my spine. I was about to tell them all to leave when Violetta came out from the kitchen, and her reaction stopped me cold. Her face turned as white as paper, her hands shook so violently the teacup nearly fell, and her eyes locked onto the stranger as if she were staring at a ghost from the past. She whispered something inaudible, voice breaking, gripping the doorframe to stay upright. In that moment, I understood. This man was deeply connected to my mother, perhaps a part of the past she had never fully revealed. The air in front of the house suddenly grew heavy and suffocating, signaling that a new storm, far bigger than the divorce, had only just begun. I stood there, heart pounding like war drums, blood rushing to my head until my ears rang. Mom remained frozen, face as white as paper, hands trembling as she clutched the hem of her blouse, eyes locked in horror on the strange middle-aged man. Megan and Ridge stood beside him, smirking triumphantly, as if they were holding a secret trump card. I turned to Mom, voice shaking. "Mom, what's wrong? Who is he?" But she didn't answer, just shook her head weakly, tears rolling down her cheeks. A wave of dread surged through my chest, a dark premonition enveloping the familiar house. The three of them, Megan, Ridge, and the stranger, stepped inside, claiming they had important matters to discuss. The air in the living room instantly became suffocating. I reluctantly let them in and closed the door behind them, my hand gripping the knob so hard it hurt. Megan sat on the sofa with a fake look of remorse. Ridge leaned against the wall with arms crossed, and the middle-aged man sat directly across from Mom, his gaze sweeping the room like he was appraising merchandise. "We need to talk privately," he said in a cold, calculating voice. Mom sat down, hands still trembling. I stood beside her, ready to protect her if necessary. Anger mixed with anxiety kept me from sitting still. What did they want now, after everything? The man stared at Violetta for a long moment, then turned to me and introduced himself as Dorian Grant, Mom's ex-husband and my biological father. His words exploded in my head like a bomb. "I am Dorian Grant, Violetta's former husband and your real father, Andre." I froze in shock and whipped around to Mom, waiting for her to deny it. "Mom? No, right? He's lying, isn't he? Say something," I stammered, voice breaking. But Violetta didn't deny it. Her face drained of color, emotions swirling visibly, hands trembling slightly, an indirect admission of the truth. She lowered her head, tears falling in heavy drops onto the floor. "Andre, everything he said is true. He is your father." My heart stopped. My mind spun with faint memories of the man who had abandoned us when I was 3, the ghost Mom had spoken of in stories, who now stood before me in the flesh. I couldn't hold back any longer. Rage erupted as I stared straight at him. "So you really are my father? Then how could you heartlessly abandon us all those years ago? You ran off with your mistress and left us with nothing but shame and a mountain of debt," I shouted, voice shaking with fury, fists clenched white. "Do you have any idea how we lived? Mom raised me alone, carrying everything on her back while I grew up without a father. Why are you back now?" Dorian sat unmoved, only smirking coldly. "That was the past, son. Life isn't as simple as you think." I demanded to know the real reason for his return and why he had come with Megan and Ridge, the very people who had caused us so much pain. Dorian openly admitted that Ridge was his biological son from another woman. He didn't hide his motive either. He had recently heard about Violetta's vast landholdings and greed had brought him back. "Ridge is my son. I found out about Violetta's property. I'm here to claim what's mine," he said bluntly. His words left me speechless. "Ridge was my half-brother?" Megan sneered. "That's right, Andre. We're family now." Dorian boldly declared his intention. He wanted Violetta to give him a share of the property, claiming it was marital assets. "This land is joint property from when we were married." I'm entitled to half, he said coldly, greed plain in his voice. Then he threatened without hesitation. If you don't agree, we'll see you in court. I won't let you and that boy keep everything and live in peace, Megan chimed in, clearly taking his side, her earlier remorse completely gone, eyes gleaming with calculation. That's right, Mom. He has rights. We can split it fairly and I'll come back to take care of everyone. Ridge stood smugly with arms crossed, looking at me provocatively, confident now that his father backed him. He sneered, Big brother, stop being stubborn. Just divide the property and be done with it. I stared at them, rage boiling like fire, dread rising at what they might do next. Sue us? Threaten us further? I flatly rejected every demand, declaring that my so-called father had lost all rights as a husband and father decades ago. You have no rights here anymore. 30 years ago, when you walked out on us, you forfeited any claim to being a husband or a father. You never contributed a single cent all these years. Now you come back demanding a share. Aren't you ashamed? Get out. If you don't, I'm calling the police. I stated clearly that none of the three had any right to touch Mom's property or disrupt our lives again. This is property Mom built herself after you left. You don't deserve a penny. Get out! Rejected outright, Dorian stormed out, face red with anger. Megan and Ridge followed, eyes burning with hatred. You'll regret this, Andre, Megan shouted before getting into the car. They left, but the heavy atmosphere remained. I held Mom tightly, heart full of worry. Mom, I'll protect you. They can't do anything. In the following days, rumors began spreading through the neighborhood, started by the three of them via friends and social media. They claimed Violeta and I were greedy, hoarding everything and refusing to give the ex-husband a single cent. Neighbors whispered behind our backs, Violeta was that rich and hid it. Now she won't share with her ex. Suspicious looks and gossip disrupted the peace we had just regained. I went to work feeling uneasy. Mom stayed home anxious. Don't listen to what they say, son, she told me. But I knew she was hurt. Dread spiked every time a car stopped outside. Would they come back? Soon after, an official lawsuit arrived by mail filed by Violeta's ex-husband, my father, Dorian Grant, demanding a division of marital property. My hands shook with anger as I read it. They really dared. We immediately contacted a lawyer and prepared evidence. The trial took place a few weeks later at the local California courthouse, the atmosphere tense under the gaze of onlookers. Violeta presented complete proof. Inheritance documents from her parents, purchase contracts made with her own money, long-term rental records, and evidence that Dorian had abandoned the family without any financial contribution for decades. Faced with irrefutable evidence, Dorian's claim was rejected entirely. The judge ruled that he had no rights whatsoever to Violeta's assets. The defendant has proven that the property was acquired after the marriage ended with no contribution from the plaintiff. Megan and Ridge sat stunned in the courtroom, all their schemes collapsing in an instant, faces pale with shock. Dorian left the courthouse humiliated and furious, unable to utter a word in protest, walking out silently with Megan and Ridge trailing behind. I watched them go, feeling relief but still uneasy. Would they finally stop? Mom and I walked out of the courthouse with our heads held high, finally closing the ghost of a past that had haunted us for decades. We hugged in the hallway, Mom crying silently. I smiled, but worry lingered. The storm had passed, yet its echoes remained. In the days that followed, life slowly returned to normal, but I became more cautious, double-checking documents and protecting Mom. The anxiety about the future gradually eased, and we began a new chapter, freer than ever before. After the trial, the lives of my mother and me turned a completely new page, free from the shadows of those who had once hurt us. No more threats from Dorian, no more venomous glances from Megan, no more provocations from Ridge. All of them seemed to vanish from our world like a nightmare dissolving under the California sun. We returned to our old house, now filled with a peace we had long lost, its familiar walls bathed in a fresh light. Every morning I woke without the old heaviness, breathing in the clean air scented with wildflowers from the backyard, knowing we were truly free at last. Mom, Violeta, seemed to grow younger by a few years. Her smile shone brighter as she moved through the house, and my own heart felt lighter than ever, even though occasional memories of the past still brought a quiet ache. We made no rushed changes. Mom always reminded me that real happiness lies in simplicity, not in outward show. Quietly, without fanfare, Violeta transferred a portion of the property into my name, simply a silent compensation for all the years her son had struggled. One peaceful afternoon, she called me into the living room and handed me the prepared legal documents. Her voice was gentle. "Andre, I'm transferring some of the land to you. Not to make you suddenly rich, but to make up for all the hardship you endured because of me. Use it wisely, son." I took the papers with trembling hands, tears welling up as I looked at her. "Mom, I don't need it. You've already given me so much." She shook her head and stroked my hair. "This belongs to you. You deserve it." We told no one, held no celebration. We simply signed the papers at a local lawyer's office. A deep warmth filled my heart, as if all her sacrifices were now quietly repaid. I did not keep the land as it was. I knew holding it unchanged might invite unnecessary trouble. Instead, after careful consultation with the lawyer, I sold several suburban parcels, ones Mom had patiently acquired over the years, at fair market value without rushing or letting myself be lowballed. The proceeds were larger than I had imagined, enough to turn a long-held dream into reality. The sales went smoothly thanks to a friend in real estate, and when I held the money in my hands, I felt both nervous and exhilarated. This was my chance to prove myself through effort, not luck. With that capital, I founded my own electrical and mechanical company. I started small, rented a modest office on the outskirts of California, hired a few trusted workers I had known from past jobs, and took on manageable contracts to minimize risk. I named it Brooks Electric and Mechanical, using our family name as a reminder of our roots. In the beginning, I designed a simple logo myself, printed business cards, and went door to door at nearby construction sites. We specialize in electrical and mechanical repairs. Fair prices, guaranteed quality, I told contractors, my voice confident even though my stomach churned waiting for the first jobs. I hired 3 skilled workers I had worked with before, and we started with small projects, wiring homes, fixing machinery for local shops. Everything was modest, nothing flashy, and it felt like the best way to honor everything Mom had taught me. The early months were grueling. I personally surveyed sites, signed contracts, supervised progress, and often worked side by side with the crew to make sure every job was perfect. Some days I was up at 4 a.m., driving hours to sites, putting on protective gear, climbing roofs to fix wiring under the blazing sun, or crawling under machines until my back ached. Sweat-soaked and calloused, I never complained. This was the independence Mom had taught me since childhood. I encouraged the guys, and we shared simple lunches under trees, talking about everyday life. Thanks to hard work and keeping our word, the company gradually built a steady client base. Jobs increased year by year. Revenue grew. From small residential contracts, we moved to larger projects, full electrical installations for office buildings, machinery repairs for local factories. I expanded carefully, hired more workers, bought better equipment, but never abandoned the principle of quality first and no greed. Monthly revenue rose from a few $1,000s to tens of thousands within a year. I felt proud looking at the balance sheets, not because of the money, but because it was the fruit of honest labor. "You've done so well, Andre. I never imagined your business would grow this fast," Mom said, eyes shining when I told her about a new contract. I smiled. "It's all thanks to you. You taught me never to give up. That's how I got here." The early anxiety had turned into momentum, pushing me forward. Violeta no longer had to exhaust herself with heavy chores. Her health improved noticeably, her spirit grew lighter. She no longer scrubbed floors from dawn to dusk or stayed up late sewing for extra money. Now she had time to rest, read, or stroll in the backyard garden. The fevers and fatigue from her long illness were gone. She ate better, slept deeply, and a smile was almost always on her face. "I feel great, son. No more worries," she said as we sat on the porch. Watching her, my heart overflowed with happiness. This was the greatest reward of all. We moved into a nicer but still modest house on the outskirts with a large garden and airy living room, yet we kept our simple, thrifty lifestyle. We bought no expensive furniture or luxury cars. "I like things simple, son," Mom said when I suggested new furnishings. We kept our old familiar belongings, saved electricity and water, and ate plain meals. The only real change was comfort. We no longer worried about bills, but money never changed who we were. Every family meal was peaceful. No more harsh words, no more forced endurance, only warmth and respect. Mom would put food on my plate. "Eat more, son. You work so hard." I'd smile, tell her about my day, and she'd listen with proud eyes. No arguments, no criticism from Megan, just laughter echoing through the house and a closeness that warmed my soul. Occasionally, I heard scattered rumors about Megan and the Grants through friends or neighbors, but I no longer cared. They belonged to the past. People said Megan was drifting. Dorian had returned to his old ways. Ridge had run into trouble. I simply shook my head and asked no more. Looking back on everything from poverty, endurance, humiliation, and betrayal to today, I deeply understood the value of resilience and filial devotion. From the years Mom carried everything alone to the times I tolerated Megan out of fear of losing family, I learned that resilience is not weakness. It is the strength to rise above storms. Filial love for my mother became my foundation, the reason I stood firm through every trial. I realized that money can make people show their true faces, but only character determines a person's real worth. Megan changed for wealth. Dorian returned for greed, but Mom, with her quiet kindness, created true value that money cannot buy. I learned that blind endurance is not noble sacrifice. Sometimes decisiveness is required to protect those we love. Tolerating Megan once caused Mom pain. Leaving saved us. I understood that family is not a place where one must suffer harm. It is where one is shielded and cherished. For Mom, family was a refuge, not a burden. From the pain of my failed marriage, I learned never to trade self-respect for a relationship that has lost love and loyalty. I had endured Megan too long. Now I know my own worth. From Mom's life, I learned that silent, steadfast kindness can build something great without show. She accumulated wealth without boasting and taught me humility. On this new stretch of road, I choose to live more slowly, more mindfully, cherishing every small moment of ordinary life. No longer racing after work, I make time for Mom, for myself, and savor simple joys. To me, success is no longer measured by money, but by Mom's peaceful smile, the calm in my heart, and the value of honest work. The company grows, yet true success is seeing Mom happy and feeling at peace inside. The story ends with the image of the two of us sitting on the porch in the quiet afternoon, golden sunset light spilling over the familiar yard. A new life has truly begun.